Before you finalize your files, make sure that all curves are closed, all joined together closed curves. You don't want to have any duplicates because the cutter will cut on those duplicate curves. If you're an illustrator, make sure that you have a fine stroke and that there is no infill. Make sure you select all your geometry if you're in Rhino and do a file export selected and save it as an Adobe Illustrator file. SureCuts-A-Lot is our vinyl cutting software, and as soon as you open it you'll notice a large grid. This is our mat board. Basically it's the end of our vinyl. I chose these dimensions because the roll of vinyl I'm using is 24 inches wide, and I'm only displaying 12 inches of the vinyl coming out. You can change that here, the custom mat size, or you can choose one of the presets, and go up here where it says cutter. Not the icon where it says cutter, but up the very top next to view and window where it says the word cutter. We'll get back to that in a minute. New file would be if you wanted to start over. Usually I don't use open. Most commonly use import. Import is going to be where you choose an Adobe Illustrator file, you bring that vector geometry into this software, and then you can go ahead and just place it down at the bottom right hand corner. This represents the bottom right hand corner of our piece of vinyl that is loaded onto our machine. This is where the vinyl will start to cut. And you can change this mat size, or your board, up at the top here where it says cutter. Go down to mat size. You can choose from one of the presets, or you can change that mat size. I usually don't go too much in the height. I make the width what it is on the actual roll, and in the height I usually stick with what I'm actually going to cut. So usually maybe a foot. If you display too much in the height, it can be kind of difficult to read and see what your geometry is doing, and it can become a little blurred what's going on. So usually just create that length into what I'm going to actually cut. You can go ahead and change scale. You can copy and paste. Although I don't usually change scale unless I just need to eyeball it. For consistency's sake, I usually change all of that in the software that I'm generating the file from. Up here where it says cutter, you can do the mat size. You can also manage your cutters. If you have to change the type of cutter you're using, I usually don't have to do that once I've loaded my cutter. If you're a first-time user, you may have to do that. And where it says here, you can see mine says Vinyl Express. That's the brand name. Under that it says the model. You can choose from other types. The connection is a USB for me, and then my port says auto. For the machines at school, you actually want to look at that sheet. Make sure you select the model that you're using at school. I believe it's the Titan, but you can see the sheet for that. To load your roll of vinyl, you're going to unroll it slightly so that the back of the paper is facing you, and then go around to the back of the machine. Place the whole roll in these two little rollers in the back. It may look different on your machine. And then these here, these are the pinch roller tension, and if you push down, these will engage two little wheels in the front that push on the top of the vinyl, and that will wedge it against a main roller here that drives it. So it's like a driver. And so what you want to do is make sure that those are not engaged. I usually cut my vinyl at an angle so it doesn't get caught up on any of these ridges of the rollers. I'll show you the rollers in a minute when we get around to the other side of the machine. I pull it through, kind of get it a little taut, and then I look at the front and make sure that there's a little knife that'll cut the vinyl. I make sure that that's a little bit over the edge, like maybe a ½ inch, depending on where my rollers are here. So I think I'm going to have it right up there. And then engage those. Make sure this doesn't move easily. And then I roll it out and give it a little bit of slack. And then you're ready to start cutting. I'll show you the front of the machine here in a moment. This is the front of the machine, the vinyl cutter. We have our swivel knife that is contained in this silver cylinder. For the most part, don't mess with that, but you're actually able to put a marker in here, a pen. Right now we're gonna stick with the swivel blade in there. Right behind that is one of the pinch rollers. You can see another over here, third off camera. And those will be on top of the vinyl, coming into contact with the color. And then there's this other silver roller. It's a knurled piece of metal, and that is underneath the vinyl, so it comes in contact with the bottom, where or the paper. And these rollers, they push down. I'm gonna flip them back up. They push down to come in contact with the vinyl to hold it in place, while the little razor goes left and right, and the vinyl goes forward and backwards. It's very similar to an old printer. So why don't we go ahead and put some vinyl in there. Just be careful with your fingers not to get them pinched with the rollers, or that is a sharp little razor blade. It's pretty tiny, it's hard to get your fingers in there, but just be careful with all these moving parts as you're working. So as I mentioned, I cut a slit in the vinyl so that it doesn't get hung up on the rollers or any of these little grooves. And then I will take the tension, pull some tension and make sure there's no slack in there. And then I want the edge here to be on the right side of that little knife. Then I can drop those pinch rollers, give the vinyl some slack, and begin cutting. Now the machine's set, go ahead and hit cutter in your software. Make sure the connection's correct and you have the right cutter connected. And go ahead and hit cut. The machine will start right away, and just make sure you watch the vinyl is moving smoothly. You'll see the carriage go left and right as the knife goes up and down, and also the vinyl is going forward and backwards. You can see a closer shot here, and it's really difficult to see, especially on a color such as red. So some of your vinyl you may not be able to see what's going on, but try to take a close look to see what the vinyl is doing. Here I'm using gold because it's a little bit easier to catch on the camera. And you can see how quickly it's moving. This is actually the slowest setting for the vinyl cutter. And you want to make sure all those things are just getting cut once. No shapes are getting lifted out. See that little guy that got pulled up? Keep going. Just make sure it's cutting. It's cutting really nice. Right here you can actually see a double cut. Watch for it. You'll see the thing start to pull up, like a sliver pull up. That's an example of something that's double cut. Once you cut your vinyl out, you can cut down the vinyl into smaller sections. Here I need to use the reflection off of my light source. You can kind of see the cut lines that come through here. And for the most part, everything's intact except for one small piece over here and one over here. And these are about 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter, if not even a little bit smaller. Things that small are not likely to survive the tip of that X-Acto knife. It's going to cut them and then peel them out in one cut. If you want to get rid of all those little pieces, well then you can actually push your design a little bit further. So we take our X-Acto knife. We want to go, let's take something like this area here. Go towards the edge and just peel it up a little bit, and then you can come with your finger and just pull that out. So now what that means, if you're using this for a sticker, this is going to be the color of whatever you're placing this on. So if you're putting this on a black background, this will now be black. If you're going to use this for something like etching, whatever's exposed is going to get eaten away by your acid or your etch, and that will be a negative or like a depression in the metal. And anything that you leave red, with the sticker or whatever color sticker you're working with, anything where the sticker is going to protect it and leave it to whatever your surface is. Whether it's a polished metal or sanded or scratched up or whatever it is, once you remove this little piece here, once you remove that, it is now going to get eaten away by that etch, or it's going to be exposed to spray paint or whatever you use this for. So I'm going to go ahead and peel a little bit more of this. So I'm pulling the whole back off like as if it were just a sticker. I'd say I wanted to make this sticker and just put it on the back of my car or something. I don't need that background, I just want this. Again, if you're gonna etch, maybe you wanna leave that back on. If you don't, this will all get etched on your metal along with this in here. If this is a spray paint stencil, all of this will get painted except for what is exposed in red. Just keep making your way around, take your time, and you're handling a sharp knife. So go real slow here, because you want those little pieces to stay down. If they start to come up, just go in there with your other finger and you can push down or use a pencil or something to push down on that. Okay, now I'm gonna take my time here. You can see we lost a couple pieces. All right, I'm gonna pop that out of there. Be real careful with this knife. Pull that piece. We lost that, we're not getting it back. Now you wanna pull so that this seam here is perpendicular. So we're gonna pull this perpendicular shape. That should help that stay down. And then keep pulling. If you've got too much, you can always cut it. Put some of these scraps away, whatever you gotta do, reposition, and then keep going. Some pieces are just gonna be too tiny. Just like this one here, you might get that to stay, but you have to ask yourself, will it survive the etching process? Will it survive whatever process you're trying to do? Just take your time. You know, I'm not working at myself with this razor blade. I'm just using it to pick up the edge here. So be very careful about handling this blade. I can't say that enough. Again, we want to pull this up so that we're pulling the sheet parallel to the geometry, but we're peeling, but the edge of that is going perpendicular. So what I mean is that edge right here is perpendicular. This edge here that we're peeling is perpendicular to your geometry. And then same here. I'm gonna try to get under it here. If I peel it in the same way, like parallel, you know, that seam is parallel, these sheets will likely, these little pieces will likely pull up. So just check everything, make sure you've got everything. And it looks good. I'm very careful about the stuff it sticks onto. The back of these stickers will peel up varnishes and surfaces sometimes, so just work on a surface that you don't mind getting roughed up, like a cutting board or something like that. Don't use the tabletop, especially if you're starting off at first. Put your little scraps somewhere that is safe and not going to mess up your table. So we could stop here, or we could continue. Here's a larger one, and I'm going to show you none of these, all these little pieces survived. This is a lot bigger of a piece. This is about 5 inches, the sticker is, where the other one's about 3 inches. So all of these little pieces of geometry actually survive. The nose, these little pieces here. But the smaller you get, obviously those pieces are going to be more delicate and they might peel off. So depending on how you want to do this, you can either have the white part exposed here and that'll be your etch, or you can have the whole thing exposed here and that will be your etch. So decide how your design needs to come across, and then go ahead and pull all this material away. It's called weeding when you pull that material away. And when you're done, we'll move on to the next step, and that is pulling the sticker onto a piece of transfer tape so that we can place it on our final object. Okay, we have our two stickers. And now we need to get them on the transfer tape so then we can put them onto our metal object, a window, whatever we're going to put these stickers on. So let's move these to the side and take some transfer tape. It's kind of like a low-tack masking tape. And I just like to unroll the roll a little bit and then take my stickers and put them face down. Let's grab another one. Put that face down. And I'm going to use a little squeegee. If you don't have one, you can use a credit card. This is actually a squeegee for cleaning dishes. And then we're going to cut this out. I like to make sure that there's no tape hanging over the edge. So I'm going to trim off tape and paper. That way I know there's no tape hanging over the edge like this where it's sticky. When I cut these, I tried to make them pretty square, at least enough that it wasn't totally crooked. So I know that these lines on this paper are pretty close. You know, that's pretty good. You know, it's straight this way. It's a little crooked that way, but that's fine. And then go ahead and squeegee this even more. You can kind of see that it goes from kind of grayish to a darker color once you push more of the air bubbles. I don't go too crazy on this part because I really don't want it to stick too much to that tape, you know, that masking tape. It's called transfer tape. I don't want it to stick there too good that it doesn't come off of it, but I want to make sure that the vinyl sticks to the transfer tape, and then we will peel off the transfer tape, and then you'll see the vinyl should come to that. If that happens where it's not sticking, then you just got to squeegee a little more. And then one technique I usually use is I will keep the tape, you know, down so the sticky side is up. Then I'll take the paper that I want to come off that, like wax paper, and I'll pull it almost parallel to the surface of the table. And then go really slow. If it, see how it didn't stick? Go back, push that down, come at it slow, try it again, and just keep going. And slow down at the end, because people like to go really quick at the end, and a lot of times just like a little piece that won't stick. Okay, so now you can see the sticky part of the vinyl. It's kind of glossy because it's got a little adhesive on the back, which is stronger than the adhesive on this tape. So now we want to transfer this onto something. This is a metal container I have for my nuts and my bolts, and you can see here that I've done a sticker in the past, pretty much same color. So you always make sure your surface is clean. If you can't clean it with an abrasive or something, maybe soap and water, just get the grease off and everything. Make sure it's nice and clean. You want to get the chip paint off, anything that'll come off with this sticker. And then the reason I try to make that straight at the bottom is because you're going to apply the sticker and it's going to be crooked if I don't get it on there quite right. So that'll help align it. If this is cut crooked, it will help, it'll actually get placed crooked. So for this one, I'm just gonna eyeball it. I'll show you a couple examples. Put it like that. Bring that over here. And you can see, like right there, where the air bubbles come out. So you wanna make sure you squeegee this really well. Back and forth a little bit. Probably go even a little bit more. And same technique. Take the paper or tape that you want to come off and pull it almost parallel to the surface if you can. And everything's coming off great. Just keep going. Oh, see a little piece of red came off. If that's important, You can go back with a little more squeegee. See where that came from? There it is, it's okay. But you know, that's likely to get pulled off. If it came off during that easy, it's very likely that it might just pull off anyways. Okay, and so you can see it's pretty good, but it looks a little crooked to me, right? So it looks like it's a little bit of an angle. Another way we can do this is a little more accurate. We can actually measure this out using a square or a straight edge, some sort of ruler, to make sure that this is perfectly, you know, straight across, perfectly parallel with the surface or however you're trying to place it. So I'm going to go ahead, you know, measure this up, and let's see, look, here we are. So this is that wax paper, and what we're going to be doing is we want to peel this up and then stick that back down onto the surface. So let's get it lined up here. It's a little, you know, it's a little hard to see through, but you can see through pretty good. So measure that. Let's assume we're good. Now I'm going to take some of that transfer tape, just a little piece, or some masking tape. Even, and it doesn't have to be a high tack tape, just something. Put that up here. Measure again. Use a squeegee. Try to crease that in there. Flip it over. If it helps, you can tear that little bit of tape off right there, because you don't want anything from the sticker side sticking. Just over here, you're creating a hinge so that you can easily open and close this. And once you feel like it's pretty good, measure it again. So measure to the bottom of the surface or the side or wherever. And if it looks good, one more once over, and then you can actually flip it over and then take that wax paper off. And again, pull it parallel to the paper and the surface you're trying to work on. So don't peel it up towards the sky, peel it up straight across. And when you come into contact with your vinyl, try to go perpendicular to your shapes if you can. So perpendicular, like I am with this shape here. It's not always going to be easy because everything's not always going the same way, but for shapes that pull up easily, okay, might slow down, make sure it's all good. Okay, so we're all good. So now that's sticky right there, and that's stickier than the tape right here. So this will stick onto my surface here, then I'll squeegee it really, really well, and then we'll pull up that tape, that transfer tape. So let's make sure we're taking our little squeegee from underneath and not letting anything touch, working from one side all the way forward. So if you're working with multiple colored stickers and you have to register things, this is a great way to get that stuff to line up. So spend a little time going back and forth. Try not to dig in too deep where you're going to rip the sticker or rip the masking tape, transfer tape. And I'm going to pull that masking tape up in the exact same way, perpendicular to any of my geometry and parallel to the surface. It's a little hard to see because it's so dark. Let's get the tape off. And there it is. So these both stuck on really well. The finer detailed ones, these are a lot harder to work with. If you did something like the negative, a sticker like this is going to transfer much easier. It's going to cut a lot easier because most of the shapes are big, and all the tiny shapes you don't use. So you were pulling those off. And those are the things that get cut off in the vinyl cutter. So to keep these tiny little pieces is more difficult when you go smaller. Again, this is about 3 inches, and these little lines here, put a little tape measure up to that again. You can see it's about looks like about 1 millimeter. So you don't want to go much smaller than a 1 millimeter line if you're trying to keep it. But you can push that if you're going to peel that away, because as the machine cuts this, a lot of times it'll pull those little pieces away. So experiment
and give it a try. And if it doesn't work, maybe work with your geometry, make things bigger or smaller, and also consider compromising your design a little bit just for this process. And if you need finer detail, you may have to work with a bigger sticker or look into the laser cutter.